laptop. Right. Hey, shall I use this as well so that people can hear it? So, you may or may not know, over a year ago, I ran the Solidity, the unnamed Solidity coding contest. The goal of which was to write code in Jhonson that was actually evil, and the theme was launch a token sale of some kind that doesn't do what it means to. And that was an interesting exercise in getting people thinking laterally about Solidity coding and so forth, and produced some interesting results. But this year I wanted to do something slightly different. And so this year we focused on optimizing your code and producing code that is as efficiently as possible. So this year, different format, we have the Solidity gas golfing contest. For those of you that aren't familiar, code golf is a common activity where you aim to implement something that does a particular function in as few characters as possible. So common code golfing activities include generating checksums and rendering images and so on and so forth. But because the Ethereum virtual machine has the concept of gas and measures its computations, we have a bit of a unique opportunity here. You can do gas golfing, so you can try and write the code that consumes the least gas to do some common task. So I threw together a really basic website and put together 5 challenges. And the idea was that for each of these challenges, you would write a Solidity program that completes the challenge. There's a set of test vectors and a test suite you can download onto your local machine to test it. And then there's a secret set of test vectors on the server that are different from the downloaded ones, so that people don't just optimize just for those tests, although it might happen a little bit anyway. So then the server runs runs all the tests through your code and measures how much gas it uses and uses that for the scoreboard. So we ran this for just over a month, and we had 5 challenges. Integer sorting, so very simple, given a list of integers sorted into ascending order. A brainfuck interpreter, so given an input of a program and input data, execute it and produce the output data. To make life slightly easier on people, we did neither the tape, the memory, nor the output was unlimited in this case, although it could have been evil and made it unlimited. Hex decoding, so taking a string of hex characters and turning the bytes it decodes to. String search, so finding a needle string inside a haystack string. And removing duplicate elements while preserving the order of the list. So 1, 4, 1, 3, 2 would be 1, 4, 3, 2, for instance. And for each of these challenges, we had a standard and a wild category. Standard is using just Solidity with no assembly allowed, and wild was using anything goes, as long as it compiles, it's fine. And so the goal here was both to sort of see what sort of optimized solutions people came up with, and also to demonstrate some interesting useful patterns in their optimization, and maybe even highlight some areas where Solidity, the language, could be improved to allow for writing more efficient code. And as you can see, the winner of the standard category, so in order to make it unbelievable, we had to submit a working entry for all 5 challenges. The winner of the standard category used 2.8 million gas to execute all 5 challenges and all the test suites. Zach, the winner of the wild anything goes category, only used 291,000 gas to execute the exact same test suites. So by being able to use low-level assembly, he was able to improve by a factor of 10 over the next best entry that was restricted to pure Solidity. So there's definitely optimizations available here. So I'm not going to try and dig down into the code of all of them, but I wanted to highlight a couple of sort of standout results. One of the main reasons that Solidity code, pure Solidity code, tends to be slower than assembly code is there are a few significant things that you simply can't do efficiently in Solidity. So a really trivial example here would be with the brainfuck interpreter. If you want to, hang on, see if I can. The brainfuck interpreter, it's the signature for the function is that it's supposed to return a byte array that is exactly as long as the return data. And we conveniently told people that you would only have to return, the maximum length would be 1024 bytes, but you still have to return the byte length. In Solidity, there's no efficient way to resize a byte array, and there's actually no efficient way to copy a byte array. So all of these programs spend a not insignificant amount of gas doing something like this, literally looping over every single byte and copying it from the temporary storage into the output. If you could do word-by-word copy, you could speed this up by a factor of 32, because the entire EVM is based on the 32-byte words. And here you're actually literally loading in an entire word, masking out all but one byte, and then storing that byte, and then repeating again, shifted by one. If you could modify the length of byte arrays, you could skip this copy entirely, and you could just make one single operation to resize the array. So there are cases like this where, particularly when it comes to mismatches between the abstraction offered, so in this case, byte array, you can only index integer bytes, and the underlying storage where like the words are 32 bytes, that lead to a lot of inefficiency in the Solidity implementation. And potentially there are compiler provisions and so on that can be offered in the future of Solidity to improve this. Another example of this is the hex decoding, for instance. In the case of hex decoding, there's sort of a naive solution, which, interestingly, the winning entry effectively is just a very optimized naive solution. It gets each pair of x characters, splits them up into hours, decodes each one, and then it puts them together and so on. And this is the obvious approach, and again, it doesn't really make use of the width of the word size in the EVM. If we look in contrast at the assembly solution for the same problem, Zach's solution, so I won't go into too much detail because I'm sure he wants to reveal all the innards himself. This does some incredibly clever bitwise magic, and it actually fetches an entire 32-byte set of hex characters, and then succeeds in decoding all of them in parallel, a lot like doing a wide operation on the CPU. So with a series of bitwise operations, he's able to decode 16 bytes of hex all at once without having to operate on individual bytes. And again, this is something that would be hard to abstract, or in this case at least, would be hard to abstract in sort of Solidity without assembly, because you need to sort of break the abstraction that it's bytes and start treating it like words. There are other situations like this. For instance, the winning brainfuck interpreter basically implements a jump table, which you can't really do in Solidity and so on. Some of these cases are more egregious than others. Like I would say that the fact that you can't either copy byte arrays efficiently or even resize them is a pretty egregious limitation of Solidity that would be easily resolved. Some of the others that sort of intrinsically require reaching down into stuff are a bit different. I have an entire string modules library which is written almost exclusively in assembly because all of the interesting things you want to do with strings are way more efficient if you can do them in assembly. One more example before I let Zach tell us about his brilliant winning entries. The string search, the obvious trivial way to do string search is just to start with the needle at the beginning and compare each character until you find a mismatch, and then move one and so on. You can optimize that by using a better algorithm. There is an algorithm called Boyle Law, which does a much better job and saves a lot of redundant comparisons. But in the EVM's unique environment, you can actually do something else reasonably clever, which is hashing is really cheap in the EVM using SHA-3. You can hash the needle, and then you can compare that to a hash of the needle's length of characters in each position. And if you look at the two winning entries, or the two top entries in the assembly category, one of them does Boyle Law, and the other one does hashing. And they come almost within a whisper of each other. So although it's a theoretically less efficient string search function. The oddities of the Solidity virtual machine make it actually significantly more effective than you'd expect, because you can get the hash ridiculously cheaply. So I guess the upshot of all of this is it's an interesting context to have. I myself and hopefully others are going to write up posts about individual entries and what they tell us about how to optimize the gas, both if you want to keep pure Solidity and if you want to use assembly, and also maybe ways that the language could be improved to take advantage of this. And the other thing is that a lot of these entries are very well commented and described. Again, Zach's in particular are actually excellently commented, it's very easy to follow them. But a number of other entries the same. I highly recommend browsing through them and having a look. So thank you very much, and I'll hand it over to Zach.
Sorry, are there any questions? Yes.
Would you be like rolling in any of these like any of these improvements in the object library?
That's a good question, actually. The string search in particular, the winning entries are clearly very optimized for gas at the exclusion of all else, and that means they're quite well and complicated. But some useful, a sort of more moderate version of that would actually be an improvement over the current string search, and the same goes for things like decoding and so on. So yes, there are definite lessons to be learned in terms of building better libraries that are more efficient without being enormous. The context only allows valid compilable Solidity programs. I would have liked to offer more, but the fact that we needed people to submit source code so that we can reveal it at the end meant that we had to have to compile it on the server side, and it was a bit too much overhead to support compiling several languages. But that would be a good question. Zach could probably talk more about learning all the stuff from you, about cases where things that look like Solidity assembly actually doesn't necessarily translate directly into optcodes, and therefore there may be inefficiencies you just have to eliminate. Anyone else?
So you've done the underhanded competition, now you've done the golf. What's next?
I'm given how well this one went and how Solidity develops over time, I'm tempted to run gas golf again next year with different challenges and see how much the language and the program has evolved. But it's maybe between now and then something else will come up. All right, thanks again.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for that. So yes, Solidity gas melting competition. So I'm just I made a few slides. So here we go. How not to write a smart contract? That's how I do it, because there's a question, isn't there, in this table? How the winning entries 10 times more efficient than the Solidity ones? And whilst there are two reasons for this. One is obviously that by using removing extracting Solidity, you can provide much more efficient code at the cost of maybe not so secure, but it's fast. The other is, well, I'm gonna be honest here. When you spend as much time as me and Wicketh, Raymond Lerman have on this competition, it's relatively easy to figure out the structure of the test vectors, and so one can fit certain patterns. I'm going to be completely honest here. I think neither Wicketh or I wanted to kind of overfit the test vectors, but I think we're also quite competitive. And so as we were having it out on the leaderboard and the gas scores dropped and dropped and dropped, you think, well, he must be fitting the test vectors. Because there's no way you can get out otherwise. So that means that I have to. And so what this score leaderboard doesn't show is after the midnight deadline, we carried on into the small hours of the morning, and I would have demolished my score, absolutely fractured. Although at that point I feel like it become a race to the bottom of just keeping the test vectors and the algorithms were some optional extras. So at this level, we both drew the line, I think, fairly honestly, and it's mostly good code, maybe. Anyway, without further ado, what I want to talk about for a little bit is if I can actually know how to use my computer. Oh god, yeah. Why is this so slow? Okay, my poor computer. It really doesn't like. It needs a bit of an update. Come on.
It's not Windows.
Yeah.
Windows 10.
Don't buy a Windows computer, folks. It's not worth it. So how to win? As Solidity got finally. So yeah, sacrifice absolutely everything you can for efficiency. At the point where your code is unreadable to get to mess, as we'll find out in a bit. But also, be sneaky. So something I wanted to highlight because, for full honesty and all that jazz. I was top of that leaderboard for about 24 hours in total, over 30 days that competition ran. But timing is everything, right? I have a little bit of code here, which basically just runs up the gas cost of my functions, because I wanted it to say they worked. But I didn't want my nemesis, my rival, to know that I'd beaten his score. So I created this super sneaky gas expander. And yeah, so at 15 minutes to midnight, suddenly my scores got a whole lot better instantly. And which is why, anyway, so, yeah.
Is that by the rule or by the way?
The thing about rules is they need to be defined before they can be enforced. I suspect the second Solidity gas competition might have something to say about making your code deliberately less efficient.
As far as I was concerned, anything that compiled would have statistics was suggested. And I didn't want this to make it difficult to do things that would, like overfishing. And so the next version will probably have lots more statistics.
Yes.
Dirty tricks are absolutely interesting.
So it's a bit like Zach had a handicap where you want to know.
Yeah, it's, yeah.
Why is this not working?
Running with crutches. Way at the last day.
So for some reason, my rendering a simple PDF is beyond the capabilities of my machine. So I'm going to try and see if the actual PowerPoint presentation works. Oh, yeah. Apparently, I don't know tech very well. Where is my OMNOP? I can spell. What was that? I haven't. No, I think once we close the funding, the first thing I do is buy a new damn computer. So anyway, what I want to talk about a little bit is why is Solidity in 970 so much faster than Solidity, and that's because there are some golden rules. Well, I mean, they're not called the golden rules. I just call them that Solidity enforces an abstraction layer, which is somewhat required to compile relatively safe code that you don't see. This all happens on the it's going to write Solidity. And one of them is not that one, because my computer's too bloody slow. Come on. There we go. Don't use it now. So the EDM is a stack-based virtual machine. The idea is you can push items onto the stack, you can take items off the stack, and you can perform various mathematical operations on stack variables. And so what I've done here is this is a little bit of test code, which just runs just a loop just to show what's happening under the hood. And the bits I've highlighted are, well, when you're inside a loop in Solidity, the state of the stack is always neutral at the start and the end. Basically, all the variables that are lined up at the start of the loop in the stack will be exactly the same variables at the end of the loop. Because if you don't enforce that, then the state of your stack is a function of the number of iterations of your loop, and so your stack state quickly becomes undefined, and then your compiler just kills it and dies. But this abstraction adds inefficiency. If, sensible inefficiency, but you can gas off, then maybe not so much. If you want to, for instance, assign a variable, what actually happens under the hood is that the compiler will duplicate the variable that you care about, then swap it to the relevant position of the stack where that variable ought to be, and then pop that variable off the stack. So that's a duplicate to swap on pop operation, which is 8 gas. Whereas if you manually manipulate the stack yourself in order to assign a variable, well, you just need one swap operation, and that's 3 gas. Similarly, when you're in a loop, because the compiler wants to enforce the consistency of the stack, you have 2 jump instructions. The first jump instruction is your loop test to see whether the loop ends. So you can see here, I said if I is less than 32, so saying push 32 onto the stack, that's 20 hexadecimal, push I, duplicate I on the stack, and then take the less than operator, which is less than 32. And if it's not, then you jump to the end. And then when you run it, go down to the end of the loop, you jump right back to the top. So if you're writing inline assembly and you want to, write a highly optimized efficient code and you don't really care about stack status or stability or security or anything else, you can merge them into one jump operation. Basically, you fall into your loop. You assume that you will run at least one iteration of it, and when that's not the case, you have a special guard. But your last operation, instead of it jumping to the top and then running your condition test, you can just run your condition test or the inverse of your condition test at the bottom of the loop. And if your test fails, you jump back to the top. And so you save 12 gas. So if you have a loop, for instance, in a sorting algorithm, where you're assigning a variable, and that's all you're really doing, but that loop is being run an enormous number of times because the sorting algorithm is 10 log n, then that's roughly 20 gas per iteration you're saving. So you're doing 1,000 iterations, that's quite a lot of gas. So it's one of the reasons why inline assembly could be so much faster than Solidity. Another one is Solidity has a concept of free. Oops, oh, Solidity has a concept of a free memory pointer. Yeah, there we go. So essentially, this is kind of a Solidity pattern at the memory index 64. So byte index 64, the memory address of the next free block of memory is stored. The idea being, if you want to assign like memory array or anything in memory, you will what the compiler will do is grab the free memory pointer, increment it by the amount of extra memory you want to allocate, store it back at address 64, and use and then basically consider that block of memory to be defined to be whatever you've created, right? Whatever. And so this is obviously very secure because you don't get into any problems of garbage collection of memory because you don't reuse memory. So in inline assembly, one of the first things to go when you're writing efficient code, and I mean efficient in very specific context here. I don't mean production quality code. I mean the kind of code you want to write when you're doing gas code. You define your own memory map. You get rid of the free memory pointer because you can know explicitly where in memory every single variable or pointer or array is supposed to be, because you can define it yourself if you want to care about that kind of stuff. And so here are the kind of theoretical inline assembly tricks that you can use. A little box of unpleasant little extensions if you want to write efficient code and you're desperate for some gas saving. So the first one is mutate the stack. Don't if you know exactly where every stack variable ought to be at every single point in your code, you don't need a stable stack between loops, for example. You can, instead of, when you want to assign variables, instead of doing some complicated swap and duplication pop operation, you can just swap stack variables around and basically redefine what your variables point to instead of what the variables are. You can also scorn static typing, and that's one of the reasons why the hexacode is so fast, because bytes array could be an array of bytes 32, it could be an array of units, it could be whatever you want in memory, because in assembly there is no concept of types, it's just, you just have the machine word, which is 32 bytes of data. And so, for instance, the brainfuck interpreter, there's a lot of variables which I either consider, depending on the subroutine they're involved in, are either unity of identities or unit dates. And you can't obviously do that in Solidity because probably cause a lot of bugs if you quite insecure. And so, for instance, I just copy and paste a little bit of code here, which is just a basic, it shows a couple of things. One is the kind of the idea of just using one jump function by using a condition test at the end and jumping up to the top if the inverse fails. The other is a little bit of unique to the hexacoder is that, which I get into that a little bit. So about that hexacoder, how does one convert ASCII encoded hex into hexadecimal hex? It seems a little abstract, but I'm sure it's probably useful somewhere. So what I've got here is basically the table of the ASCII characters and their binary representations. The idea is you need to convert these into actual binary. So 0 is 0, 1 is binary 1, and so on. And the first thing to notice, so two things to notice here. One is that if you take the alphanumeric characters, if you take the lowest nibble and add 9, then you get your required, desired hex. The other thing is that all the alphanumeric characters have their 7 bits set to high, and the numeric ones don't. So you can use that, you can take advantage of that by basically using an entire machine word of use an entire machine word of 32 bytes, and you convert, as Nick said, you convert the hex all in one go. The first thing you need to do is you mask off all but the 7th bit of every byte, and then you multiply it, and then you want to convert that number, which is going to be 2 to the 7, like offset by whatever bytes you have, to 9. And so the traditional thing is you would just divide that down by 2 to the 7 to get 1 in every byte, and then you multiply that by 9. And then you add that to your hex. So this is a little trick that I came up with, which is one of the reasons why my poor beleaguered hex decoder was one of the very few algorithms that WCAF ended up not beating after the competition ended. So where is my, I had them all open, 1 second. Yeah, so the hexacoder here. So I commented quite heavily because, well, I barely understood what I was doing, so this was kind of self-referential at some points. So the idea is you mask out the 7th bit of every byte, so OX40 is the hex equivalent. And then you want to multiply that by 2 to the 253 plus 2 to the 150 modulo minus 1. The idea is if you do everything, I mean, mod minus 1 is just every bit set to high. So under that modular regime, then multiplying by 1 is the same as multiplying by 2 to the 256. And so dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying by 2 to the 255. And so essentially what that means is you can convert your 7th isolated bit to a byte. You convert that into a 9 value with one operation, and it saves the gas. And so, yeah, you isolate the bit, add it into the original hexadecimal word, and then you mask out the least significant nibble of every byte. And then you get your kind of, you get your converted hex, but it's not formatted correctly, because then every byte has hexadecimal value. And what you really want is every nibble to have a hexadecimal value in it, because hex is 0 to 16, so it needs to be packed twice as dense. And so this is the kind of an algorithm which does that in a kind of logarithmic time per machine word, which is where the real efficiency comes. So yeah, it's basically you just it's kind of concatenating up bytes together. The idea is you use a multiplication operation to duplicate. You take a nibble of data and you copy. Basically, you copy it into it. You take its. What am I trying to say? You put it in its allocated nibble, and then you also put it in the next significant nibble, so basically double everything up. And then you mask off half of the result, and eventually you kind of concatenate all your nibbles up into the top 16 bytes, and then you can lay that out of memory, and job done. And so, yeah, sorry, that was a little hard to follow. One of the other things that you can do within line assembly that you can't do in Solidity is emphasize. Is a poor man's binary pointer. Now, emphasize isn't really used very often because why would you normally? It's an optcode that gives you the total size, the amount of memory that you allocated in your program. And so obviously, emphasize will always point to an unallocated piece of memory by definition. So one of the values of this is it's self-incrementing and it costs you less. So instead of having to keep a pointer on the stack which points to your the next memory unit of your array, If you think about if you're doing that, you have to add 1 to the pointer for every time you loop, which is at least 6 counts, but it'll in reality be 9 because you probably need to swap things around on the stack. Yeah, this thing's only 2 counts, so it's much cheaper. And that's one of the reasons why this thing was so fast. And so what this algorithm is really is it does that whole, takes a machine word, converts it into 16 bytes of hex, does it twice, and then it has a condition test to jump at the start. And one of the things you get away with the hex decoder is think about what the data format of your machine word is, or call data. If it's valid hex, then you will never have a word that is full of zeros, because the hex, like the valid hexadecimal characters are 0 to F in ASCII, which are all like much larger than 0. So as soon as you find a machine word which is full of zeros, that means you reach into your array and you can exit. So you don't need to do any kind of like is I greater than the size of your call data. You say global guess then. So not entirely sure how useful some of that is for day-to-day programming, but if you're in a bind and you absolutely desperately need to allocate memory as cheaply as possible, then size is your friend. So that's basically hexacoder. The other ones I am quite, let's see if I can go through them in time, because some of them are quite fun and less mathematical. This isn't one of them, this is a blue filter. So remove duplicate elements. The idea is, obviously, this is kind of like a very common computer science problem. It's been the bane of many, I'm sure, aspiring job applicants who fail white most interviews, is how do you have an array of data, you only want unique items, you want to remove the duplicates. The naive solution is all around squared. You basically iterate over your array, and for every single item you're considering, you iterate over again to see if it's already present in the array. Hash tables are a more efficient way of doing this. The idea is you take your data, you hash it to a key, and the value of the key is either 1 or 0. It's 1 if it's a member of the set already, and it's 0 if it's not. The idea is then you don't have to do any kind of recursive iteration. But blue filters are cheaper than hash tables. They're also probabilistic, which means that this only probably removes duplicates from a set. Although, when you're running over a specific set of data, it probably could skip on to pass the tests. And as I said, anything goes. And in my defense, I turned up this competition late, and it was pretty clear that the only way of getting winning entry here was to use a probabilistic filter. It's terrible. Anyway, so that's the maths. It doesn't matter. It's not important. I just thought I'd put it there for fun. A blue filter, basically, you take the item that you're considering that you want to test set membership with, and you hash it into an enormous binary string where only one bit is set to high. And that bit is supposed to be determined deterministically, but also pseudo-randomly. The idea being, your filter is this giant word, this giant binary word, and if you want to test set membership, you hash the word you're testing to one of these giant words or one bit is high, and then you see, is that bit high in the filter? If it is, then you've already added that member to the set, probably, so you discard it. And if it's not high, it means your item isn't part of the set. And you add it to your set, you set the relevant bit of the filter to true, and you keep going. And so this filter is 8,096 bits long. That was how large it needs to be to reliably get and remove all the duplicates. And so the question is, how do you do that? The machine word size in Ethereum is 32 bytes, it's not 1,024 bytes. And how do you hash a word to a bit index? So what I did was, maybe it's worth, yep, it's definitely worth going to the code because I don't write any more slides for that one. So here is my hex decoder, not hex decoder, uniquify thing, blah, blah, blah. And the first thing you need to do is, okay, disclaimer, this is some code to test for trivial data structures, like, for instance, if there's only one element in the test vector. But anyway, yeah, I wasn't the only one that did that. So the first thing to do is the hashing algorithm. You don't want to use a SHA-3 hash, because a SHA-3 hash, whilst it's relatively quite cheap, it's still about 40 gas to do a hash. A much cheaper way of getting a really crappy hash that's just about good enough is you take your number that you want to test and you multiply it by an enormous prime number. And the result is probably sort of pseudorandom if you kind of squint a bit. It's good enough for a hash table, basically. It's not random at all, it's good enough for a hash table. So, yeah, I have a prime number lying around. That's the, I think it's the prime field for the EM, pairing curve for the solidity figure path. And if you, what I was doing here was, once you have your hash, you need to convert that to a bit index, and so I split my blue filter into 32 by limbs, and so there are 32 of them because of how I define the size of the blue filter. The idea being basically it's very easy to, you pick out bytes of this hash variable to index the lim of your filter. And then within that lim, you want to get a unique 256-bit representation of a lim filter. So basically you want to then, you want to convert a number from 1 to 256 into a 256-bit variable where one of the bits is high. And the way I did that was with the lookup table. And you can't do this in Solidity either, because it is essentially, this is essentially an 8-word array. So you could consider it like a unit array with 8 entries in it. But I don't access it. It's literally when I access an array, you have to access it by an index, which is basically in 32 byte intervals. I access this array in 1 byte intervals, and in doing so, for each one of the possible 256 bytes, you get a unique bit string. And I just ordered the lookup table in such a way that each relevant possible entry of each one of the 256 entries in the lookup table gave you a different bit set to higher. And so, yeah, so that's a little hard to follow. First time I talked about this stuff. And so essentially, what the algorithm is, hash your variable into something that's sort of random, use that, pick out a byte of that random hash to get a value from 1 to 32. That defines the lim of your multiples that you're testing against. And then, for that given lim, you then use the other lookup table I've got and another chunk of randomness from your hash to get a deterministic pseudorandom 256-bit number where only one bit is set high. And once you do that, you can test it against the relevant lim of the blue filter, and then test if the lim bit is set to high. If it's set to high, you then test if it's set to low, and if it's set, and then you set the other bit. And that's the algorithm. I also use n size here to. Do I actually use n size? I don't use n size. Oh, do I?
3 lines.
I can't even follow my own code. Sorry. Yeah. So this jumps all over the place. But basically, if I want to add to a set, I actually test the inverse because it's a little bit cheaper. Because then you don't need to skip an is0 optcode because you're testing for the inverse. And if you want to add it to a set, then you go down here, and there we go. M size M store. That's the offending line. Anyway, and then once you're finished with your loop, my loop condition test here is called data size, which is a little bit cheaper than having calculated the actual size of your input array, because pushing that into the stack will cost you 3 gas, because it's a duplication operation, and call data size gives you the size of in bytes of your input data, which is the same thing, and that's only 2 gas. So they're setting that. Yeah?
Did you consider storing the blue filter with just one bit of words if you wanted to do bitwise ops.
One, yeah, but then the bill filter becomes huge, absolutely enormous, because if you're storing 1 bit per word, then you need 8,096 words, and each word of memory in a smart contract, when you allocate it, costs at least 3 gas, but it expands quadratically with the size of your memory that you allocate. So if you want to allocate 8,096 machine words, that's going to cost you in the region of about 50 to 60,000 gas, which is basically the sum total of the gas consumed by the Bloomfield program. So that's why the bitwise operations are the cheapest way of doing this. So yeah, Bloomfield. Something I just remembered before. I want to go back to this because I just want to highlight this before it gets forgotten. Because this was not the winning entry of the hexadecoder. This one was actually quite a lot bit slower than a winning entry. It's because I had an algorithm which was basically it iterated over every byte of data. But here, this isn't an optcode you see very often in smart contract code. That PC optcode is a program counter. What I'm doing here is I'm using the program counter to index memory in a smart contract. Because essentially, in this algorithm, I arranged it so that you have a machine word in a standardly defined location memory, and then you want to pick every other byte out of this word. And so now you could just push a literal onto something. You could say load the 0th byte, load the 2nd byte, load the 4th byte, load the 6th byte. But pushing a literal onto the stack costs 3 gas, and the program counter only costs 2 gas.
And you need NAND.
Pardon?
And you probably need NAND. Oh no,
No, you don't need that. Because you basically arrange your code so that the word that you're putting in memory, you arrange it so that it is placed at the position of the program counter when you want to iterate over it. So essentially, if you change this code in any way, it won't work because then the program counter won't line up with memory index. And so I'm just happy I got that working. But don't do that in production code because that would be usually annoying. So that was so hex decoding and uniquify and all that and OMI. What I want to go to next is, well, I want to just if I had a there we go. So I'll go over this relatively briefly because it's there's a lot to go through in this one. It's relatively simple. So as Nick said, there's kind of this when you're testing either the string, you can use I can't remember the name of it. That one. Yeah. I ended up reading academic papers about string searching for this. This was bit of an apple. Versus hashing. And so basically, you want to test the index of the string. In Solidity, there's a very cheap way of doing it because, well, every machine word is 32 bytes long, which means you have 32 string characters. And so imagine in a simple case scenario, your needle is 1 character. So you want to test it the first index of the letter B. The faster way of doing this is a bit hack. And so this is one of the really fascinating and interesting things about the Ethereum virtual machine, is that all these interesting little bit twiddling hacks, which in reality aren't very fast because computer architectures are just much better faster iteration than they are with bit alphabet operations. Well, they actually become really quite fast in the Ethereum virtual machine because the cost of gas of every opcode is relatively static. And iteration is actually one of the slowest things you can do in Solidity because the conditional jump instruction is one of the most expensive opcodes in gas. I'll get that in a minute. There's a reason why that is, and you can use it in brainfuck. So what you can do with testing the index of a string is you take your needle byte, you multiply it up so that it fills every byte of the machine word, and then you do an exclusive OR operation with your haystack word. So you basically iterate over your haystack 32 bytes at a time instead of 1 byte at a time. And if you do this for a matching string character, the byte is going to be 0. So then what you do is you add that binary number, which is 2 to the 8 minus 1. So you basically you set every bit of the top bit to high, and you add it to your word. And so the result of that is if the initial byte was 0, then the 8th bit will be low. And if the initial byte wasn't 0, i.e. the actual didn't find hit, the 8th byte will be high. And so then what you do is you invert it. so that if you have a match, the 8th bit is high, if you don't, the 8th bit is low, and then you mask off everything other than the 8th bit, and then the resulting word will only be not 0 if your needle match. And so you can use this to iterate over the string 32 bytes at a time instead of 1 byte at a time. It gets a bit more complicated because obviously the needle isn't 1 byte, it can be many bytes. And so what the algorithm I ended up using, I picked 3 bytes in the middle. The first byte, the last byte, and then a random byte. And I tested those bytes and iterated 32 bytes at a time. The idea was, well, if all 3 bytes match, then it's probably a match. But then I was honest on this one. I was honest on this one. When the 3 bytes match, I then went into a more expensive, complicated algorithm and checked that there was actually an actual real match before going back and iterating out. But yeah, so this one was fast because I could iterate over 30 bytes at a time instead of 1 byte at a time. So I want to get to this one because I guess get that slide. I'm really quite pleased with my breakup interpreter. Did you see my breakup here? Yeah, you know what's there. You know what's lurking. It wasn't the fastest, which is the race. Bregmo is a bit of a wizard at this stuff, and his brain fuck very euphemistically executes something he calls peeping parts, which is basically testing for explicit brain fuck programs that were in the test vectors, which is I can't say in my hands if I did it wrong. I did it with that, but not for brain fuck. This one is as Nick said, I think he said, basically with brain fuck you have 8 opcodes that you have to interpret. So the naive version is for every byte of input data, you have 8 if tests. You know, if the opcode is increased, the memory pointer, increase the memory pointer. If the opcode is increase the data cell and the memory pointer index, you do that. But if statements are really expensive at Solidity because you have to do a conditional jump instruction as well as a condition test. And so, like, any statement is probably at the least 22 gaps, but it's in reality probably about 30. And so if you do 8 of these every byte, then that's 214 gaps per opcode. When in reality, you want to get that down to about 20. And you can do this with a lookup table. So the idea is you take a lookup table that maps ASCII character codes to jump transformations. The idea, if your ASCII character code is the increased memory pointer character code, you just immediately jump to it. So you don't do any testing, you don't do any if statements. And it's a lot faster. It's also outrageously insecure and not good code to write. One of the interesting things about the Ethereum virtual machine is consider most programming languages that are statically compiled. Jump transformation is always hard-coded in compile time. The idea is if you are writing a C program, you eventually go into the hood to the assembly code, you can jump around, but those jump destinations are static. Depending on the subroutine, you can either jump to A or you can jump to B, but it will never, basically, your program flow is never a function of your input. And this is one of the reasons why Solidity is very hard to statically compile. It's one of the reasons why there's an EIP out there to change this jump instruction so that you can only jump to hard-coded addresses. You can't do shenanigans like this. So shenanigans like this is why the jump instruction is so expensive, because you can't statically compile it or statically analyze it, so I've used it ruthlessly. The next step is, instead of having a lookup table that maps ASCII characters to jump destinations, your lookup table maps ASCII characters to the index of another lookup table, which maps a lookup to a jump destination. Yeah. Let me go into that because this is fun. I'm gonna. Yeah. Okay. This is let me show you this. Is this brainfuck? No. Next one. Here we go. So this is my code. Prepare to fulminate on Twitter, then prevaricate. I might have had some fun here, replacing my jump labels with him using things before I submitted. I didn't write it like this. But essentially what this is doing is this is an enormous lookup table. And it's a lookup table that basically is repeating the same 10 operations in different contexts. The idea being you have 8 opcodes, but in reality you have 10 actions, because the ninth opcoders do nothing, because the test vectors had invalid brainfuck characters interspersed to kind of make, to just make a bit of extra challenge. And you also want to, essentially what I'm doing here is, well, I need an operation to basically load up more input data. I'll explain why in a bit. What this is doing is essentially your ASCII code maps to a instruction type, but you can add an offset to that instruction type to get to a different instruction type. The idea being, I compile the brainfuck 2 operations at a time. So if, for example, you have an increase data pointer opcode, my code program will jump to the increase data pointer opcode, like the code that's subject to that. But then what it will do is it will add an offset to the next instruction before using the lookup table to jump. And that offset will mean that the next instruction will say execute increased memory pointer followed by whatever the second instruction is. And so doing this enables you to basically concatenate multiple operations together. For example, if you have multiple increase data pointer operations at once, which you do in brainfuck a lot because brainfuck is a very low level primitive language, you can basically group them all up into one big operation and save a lot of gas. So this is the lookup table. It costs about 1,000 gas just to store these variables. An optimization I would like to have done is use the code copy opcode to basically you embed this lookup table into the actual byte code of your contract, and you just copy that code into memory at the start of every execution run. But that requires modifying the actual binary byte code of exit byte code of the contract, and you can't do that. Solidity smart contract for obvious, sensible reasons. This bit of code, I called it strike Frostein bargain because it breaks one of the most fundamental heuristics of Solidity, which is don't mess up the stack when you're in the loop. This loop adds 32 variables to the stack and then gleefully jumps away. So the stack state becomes very undefined very quickly. What this is doing is essentially converting, if you want to convert an ASCII character code to a lookup table index, you need to multiply it by 20, because when you load a lot of memory up in the variable Solidity, which is what you're doing when you're accessing the lookup table, you load everything up 32 bytes at a time. So if your operations aren't indexed 32 bytes away from each other, then you'll load up multiple values in one word, and then that no longer becomes a valid index to a lookup table without a solution because everything gets mixed up. And so you can use bit masks, masking operations to get rid of that problem, but then that's expensive because you've got to apply masks. So a much more efficient way of doing this is you multiply your input word by 32, it's 20x, and then you lay that new word down in a defined piece of memory, and then you load up every other byte, every byte at once. And if you do that, then it's the most efficient way of essentially isolating every byte in your machine word at once. But it's only fast if you do it. Basically, don't be blind. This is essentially a bit shifting operation. The idea is I'm taking a machine word and I'm shifting it down the byte every single time. Now, the EVM doesn't have a bit shifting opcode, so the naive way of doing this is by dividing by 2 or 32 or how many bits you want to get down. But that is expensive because the divide opcode is 5 gas and the divisor is 3 gas, so that's 8 gas, and then you actually need to copy the word you're operating on, otherwise you mutate it, so that's 11 gas per byte. A more efficient way of doing it is you lay down your word in memory, and then you load it up, offset by byte indices. And that's effectively the same thing as doing a bit shift, but a bit shift that's limited to 8 bits at a time. And again, that's going to be efficient in turn if it's in a defined piece of memory, because if you have it in a random piece of memory that you're pointing to, then you want to increase the pointer every single time you want to load up a new byte, and that is extra inefficiency. That's the strike Frostein bargain subroutine. I basically just load up 32 words, throw them on a stack, and then run along and do whatever is next. Basically, the idea is very fun. is that you compile the brainfuck before you execute it. Because brainfuck is jumps. And if you think about it, if you don't compile your brainfuck first, then every time you jump, you've got to find your jump destination, which means iterating byte by byte over the brainfuck input. So if you're jumping 256 times in a subroutine, and those jump destinations are 1,000 characters apart, that's 256,000 bytes you're testing against, which is, well, that's really inefficient. A much better way of doing it is you find what the jump destinations are with one pass over your brainfuck input, store them, and then whenever you come to one of those jumps, you know exactly where to jump to. And then a simple extension of that is, well, if you're already iterating over your brainfuck code to find the jump destinations, you might as well iterate over it. And during that iteration, examine the opcodes that are being executed. And essentially what this crazy compilation thing is doing is it does that, it concatenates the opcodes to a time, so that when it comes to actually simulating the brainfuck, you can execute it to opcodes, or more, depending on the conditions. And so this is the compilation phase, blah, 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 blah. This is just, it's complete, I can't even read this. I wrote this at like 4 AM. This is, prepare to observe a fleeting moment of self-reflection and prepare for, okay. This is the, no, we're not here yet. Here we go, Act 2.
How many lines of code?
About 500. This one wasn't so bad to debug because Remix worked for this one. It didn't work for the sorting algorithm, so when that one had errors, I had to debug it manually. That was fun. Basically, so it's a little hard to see because I deliberately obscured the jump labels and made them ridiculous. But what these little subroutines are they are basically executing multiple brainfuck opcodes at once. The idea is, I believe deflect accountability refers to subtracting the cell, the value in the data cell by one, and cut corners and never extend it to jump forward. And so what this is doing is decrease the data cell by one, and then jump to some whatever jump destination. It was hard-coded. And so, this is the most efficient way, I believe, of executing brainfuck. So if you're absolutely desperate to have a brainfuck simulator on machine, I'm not entirely sure why you would, but please get in touch if you find a reason, because that would just be hilarious. But yeah, this is good help. So yeah, I spent 2 days of my life writing a brainfuck simulation of Solidity. Yeah, that was.
Sorry.
Yes.
So on Wikipedia it says it's to challenge and abuse programmers.
Yes.
Were you challenged and abused?
I was very challenged and abused. Yes. This is probably like a very good reference for why that EIP to change the jump instruction should go through, because this is just this can be like this kind of using a lookup table to define jump destinations is just incredibly expensive doing that, because you can't really statically analyze the code anymore, because your code, the execution of your code becomes a function as input parameters. So how do you analyze that?
It's translating, it's not C, reduces C, and that's go-tos as well.
Does it?
Yes.
Go-tos? You can have go-tos in C. I remember that. Have you ever seen one in production?
Yeah, I've actually used one to write a brainfuck So why did you obscure all the labels? Just for clarity?
Because it was for him, it was fun. Maybe. I should upload my actual code to GitHub with the problem but I'm not sure game or real. It is, okay. This is what it is. Integer sorting, however, this was a really interesting challenge, and I was a little bit surprised because I'm gonna level with the good people at the London GitHub. I hate sorting algorithms. Absolutely detest. Loathe them from the bottom of my black corrupted heart, because not because of what they are, because of what they represent. until this competition, I was pretty convinced I was never going to have to run a sorting algorithm in a professional career. And that's the only use of a sorting algorithm is it is an initiation right for young and impressionable youth who wish to join the cloistered confines of the new technocracy. Entire careers are held in the balance whilst young, eager graduates attempt to furnish a whiteboard with a sorting algorithm and to justify its efficiency. And I just dislike it because it's not any code in real life. In real life, I know code is Stack Overflow, and I use the library for sorting. But anyway, apparently not, because I wrote a sorting algorithm. It was quite fun. I wrote a quicksort algorithm, which, was pretty fast. It wasn't the most efficient. Brett Lerman had an absolutely amazing radic sort, which I highly recommend you look at. It was beautiful. But I think, whilst Reckmo's algorithm had a kind of control beauty, it was an elegance and a simplicity to it. This one I just quite like because it's inspired by Malverge. Malverge is a piece of tech programming language where the execution flow of your program is two-dimensional and can vary depending on the relevant instructions that are being executed. Essentially, an if statement of Malverge will change the direction of your program. And this is a similar thing, although somewhat inverted. Essentially, it's a quicksort. So quicksort, it's studied out in the relatively basic. You take your array and you find a partition, and then you split your array into an array which is smaller than the partition and then bigger than the partition. And then you repeat that for each partition. And eventually, you'll have arrays with size 1, and there'll be smaller to largest in an unsorted array. But there is an intense amount of debate and discussion about what pivot should be chosen. Because if you just pick the first and last elements in your partition, you can prove mathematically it's inefficient, and at least the worst case scenarios where your algorithm is very slow. So generally, you use like a median of 3. So you pick your pivot value is like you take the first, the last, and the middle element of your array, and you kind of you average them, or you take the median something. I didn't do it. But that's what you're supposed to do. A random pivot is quite good. It's actually, I believe it's somewhat optimal. The problem is when you're writing sorting algorithm in the real world, getting a random number is a lot more expensive than sorting. So you don't. However, Solidity is a fantastic source of C randomness, which is the guess opcode. And Solidity is called message.guess. And it is the amount of gas remaining in the transaction at the point where that opcode is executed. And so, obviously, if you're in an iterative loop, that number is going to dwindle down and down. It's going to be relatively random. You're not going to have any clue what it is, when you're writing the code. And so you can use that as a source of entropy to pick a random pivot in your partition. But this has some rather interesting consequences because another part of the quicksort algorithm was, quicksort is fast for large arrays of data, it's very slow for small arrays. When you get to arrays of like 32 or less, network sorts become cheaper, which basically means you do greater than operator comparisons on every element of your array in a network determined order, which means that you will eventually end up sorting your array. And so there's been quite a bit of research on the minimum number of comparisons you need for to sort arrays of certain defined sizes. And so I did network sorts for arrays that were sized 2 to 16. And I stopped at 16 because, honestly, it's hard to write because they're huge. But also, 16 is now the largest number of variables you can efficiently sort on the stack. The idea is you pull out all the variables from every on the stack and you do your sorting on the stack. And it's a lot cheaper than sorting your variables in memory, because then when you want to swap variables, you don't have to load a variable out of memory. But if you want to swap 2 variables in memory, you load both variables out of memory, and then you store them in the respective swap position. So that's like 24 gas. Whereas if you're sorting values on a stack, swapping is literally swap an opcode across 3 gas. So that's why I stopped at 16. But essentially, the thing is, I use a lookup table to define what network sort to go to. The idea being, I took the size of the partition and mapped that to a jump destination, to define which network sort to go to. And so the program flow of my program was a function of the partition sizes. And the partition sizes are a function of the random pivot choice. And the random pivot choice is a function of the gas, which changes the program flow, which then changes the choices of the network sort, then jump destination, which then in turn changes the pivot choice, which in turn changes the gas upgrade. Essentially, I have the sorting algorithm is a function, the random number generator essentially is a function of the execution flow of the program, and the execution flow of the program is a function of the random number generator. So I would challenge anyone in this room to statically compile this code, because I don't think you can. Good luck analyzing it. Yeah, basically the program flow is completely fucking random. Yeah.
Did you try using alcohol and gas again to see if it was more efficient?
That's the thing about random pivot, is if your random pivot is a function of gas, then you can fiddle with the amount of gas you have to change the random pivot. And so you can just, purely theoretically, you could submit it to a random multiple times to the server and just change the amount of gas you have to get the best result. So actually, the random pivot choice is much faster than median through any other environment, because you can guarantee it to be the fastest as possible by filling with the amount of gas for effects amount of data. So yeah, this thing is actually, the score is about 10% faster than it really should be in the general case. So okay. And so yeah, I just want to go through it a little bit because this is interesting. Where is it? Was I on it? I was on it. Cool. Cheers. Yeah, so this is a very long program of nothing but assembly of codes. And we're still going. And there we go, they're at the end. So this is about 2,000 lines. Yeah, I know. So I think the real thing I learned from the Solidity gas quality competition, I might have learned a lot about inline assembly, but I really learned that I will do ridiculous things with bottles and trinkets. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Essentially, it looks more complicated than it is because the network sorts are basically just lots of repetition over and over again. So like 90% of this code are the network sorts, and 80% of that was just repetition. Although at some point I did try to, you can optimize your network sorts because some like if you have an array of things you're sorting, some indices of that array will get compared more than others. So if you make that index, if you make that array, if you put that to the front of the stack, then if you have to swap it, you only need one swap opcode when otherwise you need three. And so you can save a bit of gas there, but yeah, that didn't go very well. So yeah, this is really the main loop. This is all there is to it. This is the random pivot sort. You can see here what I did here was I took it twice and multiplied it. I did this because, well, it just turned out to be a bit faster than taking the gas opcode. It's particularly set of data, but it's not. Yeah, in the general case, you just take the gas opcode, and then to actually get your random pivot choice. It can be quite expensive. And if you have a partition that's sized n, and you want to turn your gas opcode into a value 1 to n, except you don't want to turn it into 1 to n in intervals of 32 because what the pivot actually references is a memory index. Anyway, a much cheaper way of doing that is because I know now that this partition can be at least 16 members large. You can just mask off all the bits other than the bits that define 1 to 16 multiplied by 32. So it's yeah, very cheap way of getting your partition. So the rest of this code is relatively straightforward. It's a little bit indecipherable because instead of variables they have like dupe 3 and dupe 2 and swap. But basically what this is doing is you have a low, you start your partition, you take the first element and then last, and you iterate over your lower incremental. And whenever you find the value which is larger than the pivot, you swap it, and then you do the same with your top end, and you decrease the counter. And when you find a value that's smaller than you pivot, you swap it. One optimization here is, well, how do you decrease a number? It's not a trick question. Obviously, you call this subtract opcode, but the sub opcode assembly is order dependent. I add, A plus B is whatever. Subtract distance. If you want to subtract something from a number in assembly, the thing you're subtracting has to come on the stack before the thing you're subtracting from. And so the thing I'm subtracting is 1. How do you get 1 on the stack before the number you're subtracting from? Well, you have to swap it. And so actually, guess subtracting would be plus 1 guess, that makes 6. So I have minus 1 instead of subtracting 1, which that was kind of interesting to get to work because this Solidity optimizer, when you push that giant literal, it's actually minus 32, basically minus 1. It replaces that with multiple opcodes because when you push a 32-byte literal to the stack, well, when you actually instantiate a smart contract on Ethereum, every single byte of data that is in your program code costs 200 gas. And so a 32-byte literal is really expensive to create the smart contract. Very cheap to run it, expensive to create. So the optimizer will replace any large literal with a smaller number of operations that it can. For instance, you want to push a -1 onto the stack. The compiler will replace that with that -1, which is that 32-byte number, with not 0, not in the inverse. Yeah, it was fun to deal with that because obviously that is 6 gas instead of 3, and well, normally that's a fine trade-off. For gas golf is not. And so really that was my my little sojourn through the Solidity gas golfing competition. It was a lot of fun, and I spent far too much time on this. But I like to think, I studied that as well. And mostly what I learned is what not to do, because most of this stuff is stupid dangerous, and you can do it production code. But it gives a good insight to how Solidity works. Basically, what are the design heuristics that Solidity shows, and why they're a good idea, because when you remove them, you get code like that brain fuck in Jhonson. And that's not code you want to handle cryptocurrency transactions or things like make it out. So yeah, that was it, really. I hope at the very least it was interesting, if not that entirely useful for the general smart contract development. But yeah, those are my Solidity gas competition entries.